Hey, welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich, Trapping Inc. TV.
And I'm Sandy, and we are live on the line, sorta. We're taping on the line. We've had an interesting weekend.
Well, this is day 3, and oh my goodness, it has been brutal. I'm not sure I understand what's going on. I've been trying to think my way through it, but I'm not sure I understand. But we spent the last 2 days, and we now have what? We got, the last time out, we got 16 boxes set. And then the first day on this trip, we got 17 boxes set.
Right.
Yesterday, we got 15 boxes set.
Yeah, for a grand total of 48 Fisher Martin boxes out.
But here's the tail of the tape. Over the last 2 days, I have one of these tracker watches. And yesterday was 12,000 and some steps. The day before was just about 17,000 steps. And all of that with a chainsaw in my hand.
Yeah,
Oh
we ran
my
into some dandy downfall.
Well, it's really crazy is because what's falling this year, I mean, there's little stuff, there's little dry stuff that's falling, but big green trees.
Yeah, and a lot of spruce, right?
Yeah.
Where the root ball has tipped up. And some of those root balls are tremendous in size.
Well, a spruce tree it has surface roots. That's how it stays stable. It has surface roots. Doesn't have a big taproot like a hardwood would, or like the poplar. We have, poplar here has a big taproot.
Right.
But a spruce doesn't. Has this great big surface root system. And you have a tree. Some of those trees are like that came over, even bigger.
Yeah.
Even bigger than that. But when they tip, that root ball might be 30 feet tall and 30 feet wide. Like it all just tips up this whole big chunk of this surface area and everything. And we had one yesterday.
One?
Wow.
We had one stop that turned into about 6 trees.
Yeah, well, I went through over a tank and a half of fuel at one stop. And we'll bring a picture up here to show you, but if you look above my head, I'm standing there buried in amongst all these trees, and you look above my head, you can see the Widowmaker hanging there. And it's this big tree, and I can't tell whether it's going, when I start cutting out, if it's going to come down or if it's stable. You just don't know how this stuff is wedged. So I go around, and Sandy took this picture of me when I go around and I go look, and it has actually, its root ball has tipped as well. But it is leveraged up against another root, on top of another root ball, and then the top is hanging in the tree. And I'm looking at it, and does it have a bend back this way or a bend this way? What's the stress on it? Is it just hanging there and it's not going to fall because the root ball is going to keep it up? Because everything I got to work at is above my head. I either got to climb up on the supporting root ball to cut this, or I got to work like down here. And when you get in those situations, you want to be pretty fleet of foot, which is the last thing I am anymore. But
well, there was so much down branches and stuff over there too that you can't. I mean, you have to be pretty careful where you put your feet, or you're going to get wedged.
I got up there and I started cutting, and I'm watching for any flexing or anything, and you're watching for any snow or frost to jump like on the tree, because that means something's moving, that there's a crack or whatever. Chance I was running, you're not going to hear much. I don't hear much. According to her, I don't hear her at all. So I don't hear much anything. So I'm like high alert here, and I'm up there, and when I've seen that first bit of snow jump like that, I'm gone like beep beep the Roadrunner. And I'm way out of reach. And I stop back there and I look at it, and then it groans once, and then she comes crashing down, and then we could clean it all out. But it was pretty hairy there for a bit.
Yeah. And there was a lot. I mean, that was the worst one in terms of, first of all, some danger there. But second of all, just how many trees and how much we had to move just to get the Argo through. And there was no going around it. It's just dense back there. So as much as you think that, maybe there's a path around this. No.
Well, I cut out 4 trees, and the smallest was like that, and the biggest was like that. And in order to find my box.
Yeah.
It was like God was throwing trees at my box, because if a tree falls in the bush, it's got to knock one of my boxes off, right?
But it didn't wreck the box, which was awesome.
Smashed what it was on and flung it through the air.
Exactly.
And he kept throwing trees until he ended up getting my box. And it was like, that was something. But there was a tank and a half of fuel. I got there, I fueled up before I even lit her up to start sawing because there's just so much. And they were spruce trees. You know, a healthy spruce tree has a lot of branches on it, and these ones were just so hairy.
Yeah.
Like you just cut and cut and cut. Even you had 5 minutes of cutting just to get to the stump to the log that you want to cut, right? Because these things are sticking out and they're frozen and makes it aggravating. But what I don't understand is it because it was dry this year? Is that why these root balls are tipping?
Even drier last year. And I don't know. Someone with an arborist background could probably tell us, but it's really unusual because it wasn't just there, it was in a lot of different places. Even if it didn't block our path, there were new ones that had fallen back in the bush that we could see as well, which is it's an interesting thing.
Truly, I mean, when you look at the size of the trees just sitting here talking about, they're all big and they're at their maturity and I mean, but I cut them and they're still green and healthy.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe just the root system can't support them anymore. Just that doesn't make any sense. But they're old. Yeah. They're definitely old. But it just
well, there would have been a wind came through. And we talked about that last podcast just back here. There was a straight line wind or something that came through and knocked down, and of course hit a box. So.
But that one over there, it broke them off halfway up the tree, that high off the ground. Like, I mean, it snapped them. Like that, you could tell
they weren't big trees like those ones were, right?
No.
So I think probably the wind caught in a lot of that foliage on them, and who knows? Yeah. Somebody out there knows.
It's so weird because I mean, where those big trees grow, I mean, it's not really muskeggy, but it's like there's a lot of duff, a lot of forest stuff and that kind of stuff. Lower, wetter area, kind of, you know, and they're pretty protected. Like none of the big trees up on the hill blew over.
No,
but down on the bottom.
I don't know. Anyway, so 48 boxes now set for Fisher and Martin, and we wanted to give an answer to a couple of different things. What do we use for bait? And that would be beaver primarily, but in years where we've been able to trap muskrats, we've used muskrat parts.
Yeah, muskrats work really well, and what I usually do is I just I give them a whack. You skin the muskrat, you give them a whack, like, you know, right behind the rib cage, and then you shake the guts out into a pail, and that pail then is my bait for mink. But then half a muskrat. Oh, I cut the tail off too, because the tail's hard to get into the box. And cut the tail off, and then half a muskrat goes into each box. And muskrat works really good. It dries out pretty fast because they don't seem to have a lot of fat on them. So along about, you know, middle of December, Christmas time, I've got the shrew will have turned them into science exhibits.
Yeah.
And there'll be these cute little skeletons and everything. So that has worked really good. But this year, we went from plus gorgeous, absolutely wonderful one day to minus 0 degrees or minus 20 Celsius the next. So we never got any muskrat trapping in. So this year it's all beaver.
And the reason you like beaver is that it has all that fat on it that doesn't dry out. So the bait stays a little bit more.
I think part of it is that the muskrats don't have a lot of meat that like on the bone.
Right.
Is what I'm trying to say. Like there's a lot of bone there, and I think that bone helps them dry out or dehydrate or mummify or whatever, and makes them more edible for the shrews. It's the shrews that eats it all.
Yeah.
They clean it all off, and I've showed it before. Like the one shrew in this. I'll show you a clip here of a shrew that was busy eating on bait in a lynx pen.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy, and you could hear him chewing, and he didn't care. It was cold that night, mind you. It was pushing 30 below, and you could hear him chewing, but he was dead serious about eating. But I think that's part of it is the fact that the bone helps it dry out, or the fact that there's not a lot of density of meat. And I have it happen with beaver, because when you cut them all up, and beaver ribs and that are pretty flat, but I mean, it makes, you know, there's a piece of meat that's, I don't know, half an inch thick maybe, and a square, but they will clean down those rib bones. But if I put a chunk in there, a good chunk of like off of the leg or the tail or whatever, that doesn't get ate down. And I guess maybe it's thick enough that it doesn't dehydrate or doesn't dry out.
Maybe so. And then the other thing that sometimes we use is the beaver fleshings. And what is it that you call that?
Well, Looks amazingly like spam, but
I just had spam for lunch.
I know. No, when I flesh the beaver, you got all that meat and fat, and the fat is the greatest part because fat doesn't dry out, doesn't seal off, and it smells. It's the most smell and everything. So I would when I flesh it off, I would just take 1 quart or 1 liter
Cream or milk.
cardboard containers, and I just stuff them full and then freeze them, and then you slice them, take off a slice of sandwich meat to throw in every box, and it worked really good. It worked very good, but it got so that we got so many boxes out there and going now that well, not now, we're still 100 short of where we will be, but they're just, we didn't have enough time to keep up, and we had a couple of years there where it got the beaver numbers were down, and it was just easier to take a whole beaver and use it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the those are the baits. Like, I mean, everybody gets a hold of me and want to know, what do you use for bait? What do you use? There's no secret bait.
So that's for marten and fisher. And then, I mean, we'll get into more talk later on probably this season in terms of lynx and that kind of thing. Because you do use some different things for lynx sometimes.
Yeah, well, and the last couple of years I've been doing some experimenting. And I've shown it on the shows and that, but we'll talk about it here on the podcast as well. And some interesting stuff that just, I don't know whether the light finally went on or I had a mini stroke and I was inspired. I don't know, but some of it's working. Like, I mean, we've been getting lots of links. It's been getting better. But one of the things when people keep asking me about the baits, I think the biggest mistake people make is how big a bait they put in. You want to have a good chunk of bait there. Your lure gets them to the box. You've heard me say this so many times. They'll be going along and they will smell the lure from a great distance away. I've got lots of them where the tracks go along and the lure and the bait is over here. It goes by and the wind's like this and boom, hits the wind and he comes right back into it. The lure did that. Once he gets to the box, so you have to have enough bait there in order to convince him that that's worth going after. Yeah. I've had situations where you'll have a refusal. You go there and the marten or the fisher has gone, fisher especially. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have gone there and they'll be at the base of the tree and you'll see, you assume they've climbed the tree or whatever. And what happened then is, this is when I've had half a muskrat in there and the shrew have cleaned it off and that wasn't enough to risk or whatever, or he wasn't interested in the work involved in just getting a rack of bones. So that is the important part. Like, I like to talk about a fist-sized piece of meat in there. I like to have a good chunk of meat in there, and it just, because that's what seals the deal. Your lure got him to the box, and that's what's going to seal the deal is making that attractive. I don't know. A lot of people talk about, and you see some of my boxes have a screen on the back rather than having a piece of plywood on the back. And people say it's because they can see it and more scent flow through. Birds are attracted to it. Yeah, birds are attracted to it for a fact. It can be a pain in the butt because they'll sit there and pick all day till they get everything through that screen. But I don't think it makes it more attractive to a weasel. Like a weasel and fisher, a marten, they love crawling in a hole. I mean, they check out holes just to be checking out holes. And so the fact that they can see through that may actually be a put off for them. It may not be as inviting as them having a dark tunnel to go into. And that was when we first started. We had the very long boxes. We still have some of them today. They still catch today. Mm-hmm. I just went away from them because they were a lot more material to make and they were a lot harder to pack around. Yeah. There was so much of them, right?
Yeah. And now those ones that taper down are easier to stack and they're easier to
exactly. So those are the things to think about and to make it, when you set that box, make it so that you're controlling how that animal gets to it. You want them to go in head first. If you're using like we are on all of our stuff, are all body grips. They're all quick kill. So you want to make that great strike across the throat and across the chest, so that suitcase catch. And the way that happens is especially in our country, is for that box to be down, and he's got to climb into it. If you have the box turned up the other way, for one thing, it catches all the snow. Okay. The other thing is that, and I've seen this on footage, where people have, and I've never had any luck. I put a trail cam on a box, and it is like the kiss of death. I will put it on the hottest box for years and not catch an animal all year on it. But some people have the luck, and so it's sitting like this, and the marten will walk around the top. Its tail falls into the box, and you go because you expect his tail to set it off, and it does happen sometimes. You know, because he doesn't know what's going on, and then they'll go down or they'll leave. A lot of times they go to that box, they'll look down in it, and they'll leave. The whole thing is that you increase the chances of a bad catch. When you have it the other way around, where he's got to go up into it, his head's got to go there first. He can't back into that. His tail can't get in the way. You control its access, and so you control the efficiency of that trap by a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the way I have my boxes set up, they have just 1/2 inch groove in the side for the trap springs to go into, and then I wedge them in place because the plywood. You can just wedge using the springs, and against that plywood holds it firmly in place. Well, now that trap, the jaws of that trap are against the back of the box there, and he's climbing up the tree. That's just natural for him to reach up and grab a hold of those. Yeah. So he uses them as part of the leverage to getting up into that trap, and also it's doing a second thing. His shoulders now are above the trap, so when it goes off, they're not in the way.
Yeah. And when you wedge it on the bottom, not on the top, so that it doesn't prevent anything from locking up, and that the trap won't spring.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I tried to hillbilly one time, and it had been ate on really bad Picassoed by a squirrel. And so I ended up shoving the trap up there far enough, and with the mental image in my head that I would replace the box the next time. Well, the next time I go through there, and the spring, you can see the trigger on the trap is hanging down. How is that? And the trap hasn't gone off yet. And then I go look, and sure enough, Martin had been right through it, had pulled the screen down, had got the meat and everything, and sprung the trap. But the dog on the trap was wedged against the back of the box.
Oh.
And so it couldn't release off the jaw and let it go. So that's the one thing you got to worry about. So when you wedge it in place, you wedge it so that the bottom of the trap, what would be the bottom if you were sitting here, is going to be against the box, and that there's still clearance and lots of room for your dog to flip up.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that we've gotten a lot of, well, because everybody's just getting out there and getting going, and we've got a lot of new trappers on the Trapping Inc. Facebook page, as well as Trapping Inc. TV Facebook page.
Yep.
But a lot of people are asking about the lure that you use, because